3 months had passed since the rejection at Stellar Dynamics. Tejo had settled into the rhythm of life in the lower levels of Nexus Station. Every morning he walked to Phoenix Repairs through corridors that never saw natural light. The walls were older here, patches of rust showing through the paint. But there was something honest about this place that the upper levels lacked. Park Dongwoo was already at work when Tai-ho arrived. The old man was 72 years old, but his hands were still steady. He had built Phoenix Repairs from nothing 40 years ago. Back then, the lower levels were even rougher. Now they were just forgotten. "Morning, old man," Tejo said, hanging up his jacket. "Morning, young man," Park replied without looking up from the engine he was rebuilding. "Choi Mi-young is already here. She brought coffee." Choi Mi-young was 24 years old and the smartest engineer Tejo had ever met. She had graduated top of her class from Earth Technical Academy. Every major company in the galaxy had wanted to hire her. Instead, she chose to work in a tiny repair shop in the forgotten corners of space. Why? Tejo had asked her during her first week. "Because you are here," she had said simply. "I want to learn from the man who solved the Europa crisis." That was Mi-young, direct and honest in a way that made older engineers uncomfortable. She saw problems as puzzles to solve, not obstacles to avoid. "What do we have today?" Tejo asked, accepting a cup of coffee from Mi-young. "3 shuttles with engine problems," she said, consulting her tablet. "1 cargo hauler with a blown power coupling. And Mrs. Chen's personal transport is making that noise again." Mrs. Chen was an elderly human woman who lived in the residential section. Her transport was older than Tejo, and she refused to buy a new one. Instead, she brought it to Phoenix Repairs every few months for what she called tune-ups. Really, the machine was dying slowly and they were just making it comfortable. "I will take Mrs. Chen's transport," Tejo said. "You two can handle the shuttles." The transport was parked in the shop's main bay. It wheezed and rattled even when turned off. Tejo opened the engine compartment and immediately saw the problem. The primary motivator was cracked. A new one would cost more than the entire transport was worth. But Tejo had learned to think differently about problems like this. Instead of replacing the motivator, he could reinforce it with a support frame. His prosthetic arm extended tiny welding tools that could work in spaces too small for human hands. Within an hour, he had created a repair that would last another 6 months. It was not perfect. The big companies upstairs would never approve such a fix. But it worked, and it let Mrs. Chen keep her independence a little longer. "You are an artist," said a voice behind him. Tejo turned to see Yoon Jae-sung, Park's nephew. Jae-sung was a pilot who flew cargo runs between the outer colonies. He was one of the few people who brought Phoenix Repairs real work. Not charity jobs, but actual contracts. "Just fixing what is broken," Tejo said. "No." Jae-sung shook his head. "Anyone can replace parts. You make things work that should not work. That is art." Jae-sung had news from the upper levels. The Galactic Trade Consortium was preparing to launch their newest exploration ship. The Endeavor was supposed to be the most advanced vessel ever built. Representatives from 23 different species had worked together to create it. "Must be nice," Mi-young said when Jae-sung told them about the ship. "Working on something that advanced." "Politics," Park said dismissively. "All show, no substance. Real engineering happens down here." But Tejo found himself thinking about the Endeavor. He had read about the ship in technical journals. Revolutionary engine design, quantum processing systems, artificial intelligence that could think faster than biological minds. It represented everything he loved about engineering, the push to go further, to build something better than what came before. Not that he would ever get to work on it. People like him did not touch ships like the Endeavor. The afternoon brought a more interesting problem. A hegemony trader had brought his ship to Phoenix Repairs after the big companies turned him away. The ship was old, from a species that no longer existed. The trader could not afford modern upgrades, but he needed the ship to keep working. "Nobody else will touch it," the trader explained through a translation device. "They say the technology is obsolete." Tejo studied the ship's schematics. The technology was indeed obsolete, about 200 years out of date. But obsolete did not mean impossible. It just meant thinking in different ways. "We can fix it," he told the trader, "but it will take time." "Time I have," the trader replied. "Money I do not." They worked out a payment plan. The trader would provide rare minerals from his cargo in exchange for the repairs. It was not the kind of deal that Stellar Dynamics would make, but it was fair. Over the next week, Taeho dove deep into the ship's systems. The technology was beautiful in its simplicity. No fancy quantum processors or AI systems, just solid engineering that had worked for centuries. His prosthetic arm was actually overqualified for most of the work, but it let him interface directly with the ship's computer systems. Mi-young watched him work with fascination.
How do you know all this?
She asked. My grandfather was a mechanic, Taeho said. He taught me that every machine has a personality. You have to listen to what it is telling you. The schools do not teach that. The schools teach you to follow manuals, but sometimes the manual is wrong and the machine is right. As they worked, word spread through the lower levels. Phoenix Repairs was not just fixing broken shuttles anymore. They were solving real problems, the kind that stumped engineers with twice their credentials. A group of alien refugees brought their damaged colony ship. A human freighter captain needed emergency repairs to his navigation system. Each problem was different, each solution unique. But they all had one thing in common. The big companies had turned them away. We are becoming famous, Mi-young said one evening as they closed the shop. Infamous is more like it, Park replied. The upper levels do not like competition. That night, Taeho stayed late to work on a personal project. He had been studying the technical specifications for the Endeavor, trying to understand how its systems worked, not because he thought he would ever work on the ship, but because he enjoyed the challenge. The more he studied, the more he noticed something interesting. The ship's designers had focused on perfection. Every system had backups, every component was the best available. But perfection had a weakness. When perfect systems failed, they failed completely. Taeho's approach was different. He built systems that could adapt, that could keep working even when parts failed. It was the difference between a crystal vase and a tree. One was beautiful and fragile. The other was flexible and strong. As he worked, Taeho felt something he had not experienced in years. Hope. Not hope for recognition or fame, but hope that his work mattered. In the lower levels of Nexus Station, surrounded by broken things and forgotten people, he was building something important. He was proving that being different was not the same as being broken. And sometimes different was exactly what the galaxy needed. The launch of the Endeavor was the biggest event in galactic history. Every news channel broadcast the ceremony live. 847 beings from 23 different species would travel to the edge of known space. Their mission was to investigate strange energy readings from the Dark Nebula, a mysterious region where no ship had ever returned. In Phoenix Repairs, Taeho and his team watched the launch on Park's old view screen. The ship was beautiful, sleek white hull gleaming in the light of 3 suns. Its engines produced no visible exhaust, just a subtle distortion in space itself. Look at that, Mi-young whispered. Quantum displacement drives. I read about the theory, but I never thought I would see one working. Pretty, Park said. But pretty does not always mean reliable. Captain Han So-ra gave the final address before departure. She was a human, which made Taeho proud. Her voice was calm and confident as she spoke about exploration and cooperation between species. Today, we take the next step into the unknown, she said. Together we will discover what lies beyond the edge of our maps. The Endeavor moved slowly away from Nexus Station. Its passage was silent and graceful. Within hours it had reached the jump point. A flash of light and it was gone. For 3 days everything went perfectly. Regular communications came back from the ship. The crew was healthy. All systems were working normally. They were making good time toward the Dark Nebula. Then the signal stopped. Taeho was working on a damaged shuttle engine when the emergency alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. The intercom crackled to life. All personnel to emergency stations. This is not a drill. All personnel to emergency stations. What is happening? Mi-young asked, looking up from her workbench. Jae-sung burst through the shop door, his face pale. The Endeavor is in trouble. They hit some kind of gravitational anomaly. The emergency broadcast painted a grim picture. The ship had encountered an invisible micro-black hole, something so small that their sensors could not detect it. The gravitational field had torn through their engine systems like a knife through paper. Now they were caught in a decaying orbit, falling slowly toward the event horizon. How long do they have? Taeho asked. 18 hours, Jae-sung said. Maybe less. Nexus Station mobilized every available resource. Rescue ships launched from the docking bays. The best engineers in the galaxy gathered in the command center. Stellar Dynamics deployed their most advanced repair drones, but as the hours passed, every rescue attempt failed. The gravitational distortions around the black hole destroyed the drones before they could reach the ship. Rescue vessels could not get close enough to establish a tether without being torn apart themselves. In the command center, Director Velthar coordinated the rescue efforts. His crystal face showed no emotion, but his voice betrayed his growing desperation. Crix worked frantically at his control stations, all 6 arms moving over different instruments. "What about a long-range repair?" someone suggested. "Impossible," Crix replied. "The ship's systems are too damaged. They cannot accept standard repair protocols." Tejo listened to the broadcast from Phoenix Repairs. With each failed attempt, his frustration grew. The experts were thinking like experts, following procedures using approved methods. But sometimes approved methods were not enough. "I need to see the technical data," he told Mi Young. "We do not have clearance for that information," she said. "Jae-sung," Tejo called to the pilot. "Can you access the emergency frequencies?" Jae-sung nodded and began adjusting his communication equipment. Within minutes, they were listening to the direct transmissions from the Endeavor. The voices were calm but strained, professional people doing their jobs while facing death. "Navigation reports continued orbital decay," came a voice from the ship. "We have maybe 12 hours before we reach the point of no return." "Engineering to bridge," another voice replied. "We are trying to bring the backup fusion reactors online, but the quantum manifold is completely fried." Tejo listened carefully to the technical reports. Slowly, he began to understand what had happened. The micro-black hole had not just damaged the ship's engines, it had scrambled the quantum field that held everything together. The ship's advanced AI was trying to compensate, but it was using the wrong approach. "They are thinking too complex," he said suddenly. "What?" Mi Young looked at him. "The AI is trying to repair the quantum manifold using current protocols, but the damage is too severe. It needs to fall back to older systems." Tejo pulled up his personal files on the Europa mining incident. During his accident, the mining station's AI had faced a similar problem. When the primary systems failed, it had switched to emergency protocols designed for the worst-case scenarios. "Look at this," he showed Mi Young the old mining station schematics. When everything else failed, the AI used deprecated human military protocols. Crude but effective. You think the Endeavor's AI might do the same thing? If it is smart enough, yes. But someone needs to tell it how. Tejo studied the ship's technical specifications again. Hidden deep in the documentation, he found what he was looking for. The Endeavor's AI had access to historical databases, including old human military engineering protocols from the Europa conflicts. "This could work," he said excitedly, "but I need to communicate with someone on the ship." The emergency frequencies were tightly controlled. Only authorized personnel could transmit to the Endeavor. Tejo was definitely not authorized personnel. "I have an idea," Jae-sung said. "My cargo license gives me access to emergency channels. I can relay your message." "They will not listen to a cargo pilot," Mi Young pointed out. "Then we make them listen," Tejo said grimly. He began recording a detailed technical analysis. He explained the quantum manifold failure, the AI's compensation attempts, and his proposed solution. Most importantly, he provided the specific protocol codes that would unlock the emergency repair systems. "This is crazy," Mi Young said as she helped him prepare the transmission. "You are asking them to trust repair techniques that are 50 years old." "Sometimes old techniques work when new ones fail," Tejo replied. "Sometimes good enough is better than perfect." The message was ready. Now they had to get it to the ship and hope that someone would listen to a disabled mechanic working in the forgotten corners of space. As the hours ticked by, the Endeavor continued its slow fall toward the black hole. The rescue attempts became more desperate, more dangerous. Ships were damaged trying to reach them. Lives were being risked for a mission that seemed impossible. But in Phoenix Repairs, surrounded by broken machines and discarded parts, Tejo worked on a different kind of solution. Not perfect, not approved, but practical. The kind of fix that might actually work when everything else had failed. The question was whether anyone would give him the chance to try. Kim Tejo walked slowly through the shining halls of Nexus Station. His metal leg made soft clicking sounds on the floor with each step. He carried his tool bag in his right hand, the good one. His left arm was mostly metal now, but it worked better than his old one ever did. Today was important. Stellar Dynamics Corporation wanted to interview him for a job. They were the biggest ship repair company on the station. If he got this job, everything would change. No more fixing broken shuttles in the dark corners of the station. No more people looking at him with pity or fear. The waiting room was full of other people hoping for jobs. Most were aliens. Tall blue Zentorians with crystal skin, six-armed hegemony engineers, and others he did not recognize. Only 2 other humans sat in the room. They all looked perfect. No missing parts. No metal arms or legs. Tejo touched his prosthetic arm through his sleeve. 5 years ago, he was the best mining engineer on Europa. He could fix anything, solve any problem. Then the accident happened. A tunnel collapse. Rock and metal crushing his body. His friends said he was lucky to live. Sometimes he wondered about that. Kim Tejo? A voice called his name. He stood up and followed a robot assistant to a large office. 3 beings sat behind a curved desk. In the center was Director Velthar, a Zentorian whose crystal face reflected the room's lights. To his left sat Crix, a hegemony engineer with 6 arms moving constantly over data tablets. On the right was Lee Sangmin, the only human on the panel. "Please sit," Director Velthar said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. "We have read your file. Very impressive background. Top scores from Earth Technical Academy. 5 years of mining engineering experience." "Thank you, sir," Tejo said. Crix looked up from his tablets. 4 eyes studied Tejo carefully. "Your file stops 5 years ago. Large gap. What happened?" Tejo had prepared for this question. "I was injured in a mining accident on Europa. I spent 2 years in recovery and learning to use prosthetic replacements. Then I worked on smaller projects to rebuild my skills." "Prosthetics?" Lee Sangmin leaned forward. His voice was cold. "What kind of prosthetics?" "Left arm below the elbow. Left leg below the knee. Both are military grade. Full motor function and enhanced capability for technical work." The 3 panel members looked at each other. Tejo saw something pass between them. Not words, but understanding. "Well," Director Velthar said, "let us continue with the technical portion. Crix will show you to our test facility." The test facility was a mock-up of a ship's engine room. Real equipment filled the space. Fusion reactors, quantum drives, life support systems. In the center sat a damaged engine core. Red warning lights flashed around it. "This engine failed during space trials," Crix explained. "Our best engineers spent 3 days finding the problem." "Can you diagnose it?" Tejo approached the engine. He could hear the problem before he saw it, a slight vibration in the quantum manifold. He knelt down and opened his tool bag. His prosthetic arm extended small sensors and probes that his flesh hand could never manage. Within minutes, he found the issue. "Microfracture in the primary containment field generator," he said. "Probably from resonance feedback during the initial startup sequence. The crack is spreading along the crystal matrix." Crix's 4 eyes widened. "How did you locate it so quickly?" "The vibration pattern. Also, my prosthetic arm has sensors that can detect quantum field variations. Much more sensitive than biological touch." "Interesting," Director Velthar had joined them. "And how would you repair this?" Tejo explained his plan. "Replace the damaged crystal, recalibrate the field generators, and add dampening protocols to prevent future resonance problems." It was a good solution. He knew it was good. They returned to the office. The 3 panel members whispered among themselves in languages Tejo did not understand. Finally, Director Velthar spoke. "Mr. Kim, your technical skills are excellent. However, we have concerns about safety protocols. Our insurance requires all engineers to have full biological functionality. We cannot make exceptions." Tejo felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Sir, my prosthetics exceed normal human capability. I can work in conditions that would injure organic limbs." "I am sure that is true," Velthar said. "But rules are rules. Perhaps you would be better suited to smaller operations. Less critical work," Lee Sangmin nodded. "There are several shops in the lower levels that might be interested, more appropriate for someone in your condition." The words hit like physical blows. Tejo had heard them before, but they still hurt. Someone in your condition. As if he was broken. As if his metal parts made him less than human. He stood up slowly. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Kim," Director Velthar said as Tejo reached the door. "This is not personal. It is simply business." Tejo nodded without turning around. I understand, sir. He walked back through the shining halls, but they looked different now. Less bright, less welcoming. Other people moved past him without looking. To them, he was invisible, just another broken thing in a perfect world. The lift down to the lower levels was crowded with workers ending their shifts. Humans, mostly, and the kinds of aliens that the upper levels preferred not to see. The air smelled of machine oil and recycled oxygen. This was where people like him belonged, apparently. Phoenix Repairs was a small shop wedged between a food vendor and a parts dealer. The sign was old and flickering. Through the window, Taeho could see Park Dongwoo bent over a shuttle engine. The old man looked up and waved. How did it go? Park asked when Taeho entered. They said I was very qualified. Park's face fell. But I am not qualified enough to overcome my condition. Park shook his head. Their loss. We do good work here, real work. Not the fancy stuff upstairs, but work that matters. Taeho hung up his tool bag and rolled up his sleeves. His prosthetic arm gleamed in the workshop lights. It was beautiful in its way, precise, powerful, more capable than flesh and bone. Yes, he said quietly, we do good work. Outside, the great ships came and went from the station's docking bays. Huge vessels that carried the galaxy's hopes and dreams to distant stars. Ships he would never be allowed to touch because his metal parts made him imperfect in their perfect world. But Taeho had learned something important during his recovery. Sometimes being broken taught you how to fix things that others could not. Sometimes the pieces that did not fit were exactly what the puzzle needed. He picked up his tools and got back to work. Jae-sung's hands shook as he prepared to transmit Taeho's message. The emergency frequencies were crowded with official communications. Rescue coordinators, ship captains, and government officials all talking at once. Breaking into those channels with an unauthorized transmission could end his pilot's license forever. Are you sure about this? He asked Taeho. No, Taeho said honestly. But 800 people are going to die if we do nothing. The transmission went out on multiple frequencies. Taeho's voice, calm and professional, cut through the chaos of official chatter. He explained his analysis of the Endeavor's systems, the quantum manifold failure, and his proposed solution using deprecated military protocols. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then the emergency channels exploded with angry voices. Who is transmitting on this frequency? This is a restricted channel. Security, trace that signal. But one voice cut through the noise. Captain Han Sora herself speaking directly from the Endeavor's bridge. Unknown station, repeat your technical analysis. We are interested in any viable solutions. Taeho's heart raced. The captain was listening. He quickly repeated his message, adding more technical details about the specific protocol codes the ship's AI would need. Captain, came another voice from the ship. This is Chief Engineer Nam Ki-tae. I am familiar with these protocols from my military service. The analysis is correct. Our AI has been trying to use current repair standards, but the damage is too severe. Director Velthar's voice crackled over the emergency channel. Captain Sora, you cannot seriously consider advice from an unauthorized source. Our experts have determined that repair is impossible. Your experts have failed. Captain Sora replied coldly. I am willing to try anything. Unknown station, identify yourself. Taeho took a deep breath. This is Kim Taeho, Phoenix Repairs, lower level 7 of Nexus Station. I am a former mining engineer with experience in emergency repair protocols. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Lee Sang-min's voice filled the channel. Captain, this man is a disabled mechanic who works in a junk shop. He was rejected by Stellar Dynamics for safety reasons. You cannot trust your crew's lives to someone like that. Someone like what? Captain Sora's voice was dangerously quiet. Someone whose own body could not handle the demands of real engineering work. The words hit Taeho like physical blows. In front of the entire galaxy, his failures were being broadcast. His disability, his rejection, his life in the lower levels. All of it exposed for everyone to hear. But then Mi-young grabbed the transmission device. Captain Sora, this is Choi Mi-young, Chief Engineer at Phoenix Repairs. Kim Taeho is the finest engineer I have ever worked with. His prosthetic systems allow him to interface with ship computers in ways that biological hands cannot. He solved the Europa mining crisis using these same techniques. The Europa crisis? Nam Ki-tae's voice came from the ship. You are that Kim Taeho? The one who saved the mining station when everyone else said it was impossible? Yes, Taeho said quietly. A new voice joined the conversation. Park Dongwoo had taken the transmission device. Captain, I have known Tae-ho for months. He fixes things that should not be fixable. He makes machines work when the manuals say they cannot. If anyone can save your ship, it is him. Captain Sora made her decision quickly. Mr. Kim, we are implementing your suggested protocols. Chief Engineer Nam will coordinate with you directly. All other channels are to remain clear for technical communication. Captain, Director Velthar protested. This is highly irregular. The liability issues alone. Director? Captain Sora interrupted. In 8 hours, liability will not matter to any of us. Mr. Kim, you have the con for technical operations. Tae-ho felt the weight of 800 lives settle on his shoulders. Through the communication link, he could hear the sounds of the Endeavor's engineering deck. Alarms, rushing footsteps, the hum of failing systems. Chief Nam, he said, I need you to access your AI's emergency protocol database. Look for classification code Romeo 77 Alpha. Searching. Found it. These are 50-year-old mining protocols. Exactly. They were designed for situations where everything else has failed. First, we need to convince your AI to stop trying to repair the quantum manifold and start bypassing it instead. For the next hour, Tae-ho guided Nam through a series of diagnostic procedures. His prosthetic arm interfaced directly with Phoenix Repair's computer system, allowing him to run calculations in real time. The numbers were not encouraging. The gravitational stress is too severe, Nam reported. Even if we bypass the manifold, the ship's structure cannot handle the load. Then we do not try to fight the black hole, Tae-ho said. We use it. Use it how? Tae-ho called up his memories of the Europa incident. The mining station had been caught in a similar gravitational field when the asteroid they were mining suddenly collapsed into a micro-singularity. Instead of fighting the gravity, the station's AI had used it as a slingshot to escape. We are going to turn your ship into a gravitational slingshot, Tae-ho explained. Use the black hole's own gravity to break free. That is insane, Nam said. The stress on the hull will be less than trying to fight the gravity directly, but we need precise timing and exact calculations. Mi-young was already working on the math, her fingers flying over multiple calculation engines. The trajectory window is incredibly narrow, she reported. Margin of error less than 0.01%. Can your navigation system handle that level of precision? Tae-ho asked Nam. Not with the damage we have taken. The quantum processors are offline. Then we use analog backup systems. Your ship has them. All military vessels do. They are slower but more reliable. As they worked, Tae-ho became aware that the entire galaxy was listening. News networks had picked up the emergency transmissions. The story of the disabled mechanic trying to save the Endeavor was spreading across every inhabited world. Mr. Kim, Captain Sora said during a brief pause. Why are you doing this? After the way you have been treated? Tae-ho considered the question. He thought about the rejection at Stellar Dynamics, the years of being overlooked and dismissed. The constant assumption that his prosthetics made him less capable rather than more. Because it is the right thing to do, he said finally, and because sometimes the parts that do not fit are exactly what the puzzle needs. The next phase required Tae-ho to do something unprecedented. He plugged his prosthetic arm directly into Phoenix Repair's main communication array, using its processing power to create a direct neural link with the Endeavor's navigation system. This is dangerous, Mi-young warned. If the feedback is too strong, then you pull me out, Tae-ho said. But those people need precision calculations, and this is the only way to provide them. The connection established, and suddenly, Tae-ho could feel the Endeavor's systems as if they were part of his own body. The ship's pain was his pain, its failing systems like damaged nerves. But he could also sense its potential, the graceful way it moved through space even while wounded. Trajectory calculated, he reported, his voice strained from the neural load. Transmitting coordinates now. You will have one chance to get this right. The moment of truth was approaching. The Endeavor would fire its remaining engines at precisely the right moment, using the black hole's gravity to slingshot away from destruction. If Tae-ho's calculations were wrong, 800 people would die. If he was right, he would prove that being different was not the same as being broken. And sometimes different was exactly what the galaxy needed. The neural link between Tae-ho and the Endeavor created a connection unlike anything he had ever experienced. Through his prosthetic arm, he could feel every damaged system on the ship, The quantum manifold was like a broken bone, the navigation system like blurred vision. But he could also sense the ship's strength, its desire to fly free from the black hole's grip. Engine room reports ready. Namkitai's voice came through the communication system. All non-essential systems are offline. Emergency power is routed to the main drives. Navigation confirms trajectory, reported another voice from the ship. Analog computers are locked on target coordinates. Tae-ho felt sweat running down his face despite the cool air in Phoenix repairs. The neural load was enormous, like trying to think with someone else's brain. But it was working. Through the connection, he could make calculations that would take hours on normal computers. "Captain," he said, his voice strained, "you need to understand what we are about to do. Instead of fighting the black hole, we are going to fall toward it. At the exact right moment, you will fire your engines and use the gravity to slingshot away. If we fire too early or too late, we die." Captain Sora finished. "I understand. How long do we have?" Mi-young checked her calculations again. 4 minutes and 37 seconds until the optimal firing point. The emergency channels were silent now, except for essential communications. Across the galaxy, billions of people watched and waited. In Phoenix repairs, Park Dong-woo stood quietly in the corner, his old hands clasped together. Jae-sung monitored multiple communication frequencies, ready to relay messages if needed. Through the neural link, Tae-ho felt the Endeavor accelerating toward the black hole. The ship's hull groaned under the increasing gravitational stress. Warning alarms sounded on every deck. Hull stress approaching critical levels, Nam reported. Some of the outer bulkheads are starting to buckle. "Expected," Tae-ho said through gritted teeth. "The ship is designed to handle it. Trust the engineering." 3 minutes to firing point, Mi-young announced. Director Velthar's voice cut through the tension. "Captain Sora, our latest calculations show this maneuver has less than a 12% chance of success. You are risking 800 lives on the advice of a disabled mechanic." Captain Sora's response was cold and clear. "Director, your approved methods had a 0% chance of success. I will take 12% over 0. But Tae-ho barely heard the exchange. Something was wrong with his calculations. The black hole's gravitational field was not behaving as expected. The microsingularity was rotating, creating additional forces that his original math had not accounted for. "Mi-young," he called urgently. "The black hole is spinning. We need to recalculate the trajectory." Her fingers flew over the control systems. "I see it. The rotation is adding a vectorial component to the gravitational field. Our firing point needs to shift by calculating." 2 minutes to firing point, Nam announced from the ship. "Recalculation complete," Mi-young said. "New coordinates uploading now." Tae-ho felt the strain of the neural link increasing. His prosthetic arm was running at maximum capacity, heat radiating from its processing cores, but he held the connection, feeding the new trajectory data directly to the Endeavor's navigation system. "Navigation confirms new coordinates," came the report from the ship, "but the margin of error is even smaller now. We have maybe a 2-second window." 1 minute to firing point. Through the link, Tae-ho could feel the ship's crew preparing for the maneuver. Engineers strapped themselves into emergency positions. The bridge crew ran final system checks. In the passenger sections, 800 beings from 23 different species waited to learn if they would live or die. 30 seconds. The gravitational forces were tearing at the Endeavor now. Hull plates cracked under the stress. Emergency force fields activated to contain atmosphere leaks. The ship was being stretched like taffy, but it was holding together. 15 seconds. Tae-ho's prosthetic arm was burning now, its cooling systems overwhelmed by the processing load, but he held on, maintaining the neural link that let him monitor every system on the ship. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The moment stretched out like eternity. Tae-ho could feel the exact instant when the gravitational forces reached perfect alignment. The black hole's rotation, the Endeavor's trajectory, the ship's damaged but functioning engines. Everything had to come together at precisely the right moment. "Fire," he shouted. The Endeavor's engines ignited with the fury of captured stars. Even through the neural link, Tae-ho felt the massive acceleration as the ship used the black hole's own gravity to catapult itself away from destruction. The forces involved were enormous, enough to crush any biological being. But the Endeavor held together. Human engineering, alien technology, and pure determination, combined to create something greater than the sum of their parts. The ship's hull screamed under the stress, but it did not break. For 30 seconds, the outcome was uncertain. The ship accelerated away from the black hole, but was it fast enough? Had they achieved escape velocity, or would the gravity well pull them back? Then Namkite's voice filled the communication channels, filled with joy and disbelief. "We are clear. Repeat, we are clear of the gravitational field. All systems are holding. We are free." The emergency channels exploded with cheers from across the galaxy. News networks broadcast the triumph to every inhabited world. In Phoenix Repairs, Mi-young hugged Park Dong-woo while Jae-sung whooped with joy. But Tae-ho barely heard the celebration. The neural link had burned out his prosthetic arm's processing cores. Emergency systems were shutting down to prevent permanent damage. He slumped in his chair, exhausted but victorious. "Mr. Kim," Captain Sora's voice came through the speakers. "I do not have adequate words to thank you. You have saved 800 lives with ingenuity and courage that puts us all to shame." "Just doing my job, Captain," Tae-ho said weakly. Over the following days, the galaxy learned the full story of the rescue. News reports called it the miracle of the abyss. Technical journals analyzed Tae-ho's methods and found them both innovative and sound. The deprecated military protocols he had used became standard emergency procedures for all deep space vessels. Director Velthar arrived at Phoenix Repairs 3 days after the rescue. The proud Zentorian looked uncomfortable in the cramped workshop, his crystal features reflecting the harsh work lights. "Mr. Kim," he said formally, "I have come to offer you the position of Chief Innovation Engineer at Stellar Dynamics. The salary is substantial, and you would have access to the most advanced equipment in the galaxy." Tae-ho looked around the shop that had become his home. Mi-young was rebuilding his damaged prosthetic arm, her young face intent on the delicate work. Park Dong-woo was teaching an alien refugee how to repair atmospheric processors. Jae-sung was planning their next cargo run to the outer colonies. "Thank you for the offer," Tae-ho said politely, "but I must decline." "I do not understand," Velthar said. "This is what you wanted, is it not? Recognition? Prestigious work?" "What I wanted was to prove that being different does not mean being broken," Tae-ho replied. "I have done that. Now I want to help others do the same." Velthar left, still not understanding. But that was okay. Some people measured success by the size of their office or the prestige of their projects. Tae-ho measured it differently now. Phoenix Repairs became famous throughout the galaxy, but not in the way Tae-ho expected. Instead of clients seeking prestigious work, they attracted the overlooked and the forgotten. Young engineers who did not fit the corporate mold. Alien species whose technology was considered obsolete. Refugees whose ships needed repairs but could not afford corporate prices. Mi-young became Tae-ho's full partner, developing new techniques that combined cutting-edge theory with practical solutions. Park Dong-woo expanded the shop, hiring more staff to handle the increasing workload. Jae-sung started a shipping company that specialized in carrying cargo for clients the big corporations ignored. 6 months after the rescue, Tae-ho received a message from the Endeavor. The ship had completed its mission to the Dark Nebula and was returning with discoveries that would change galactic science forever. Captain Sora's message was simple. "Mr. Kim, we could not have made these discoveries without your courage and skill. You reminded us that the best solutions often come from unexpected sources. The galaxy is better because you refuse to let others define your limitations." That evening, Tae-ho stood on the observation deck of Nexus Station's lower levels. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the great ships coming and going from the docking bays. Some of them now carried emergency repair protocols based on his work. All of them flew a little safer because of what he had accomplished. His new prosthetic arm moved smoothly as he adjusted the window controls for a better view. The replacement was even more advanced than the original, designed by Mi-young to integrate seamlessly with ship systems. But it was not the technology that made him proud. It was the knowledge that being broken had taught him how to fix things that others could not. Being different had given him the perspective to solve problems in ways that perfect people never considered. And in a galaxy that often valued conformity over creativity, that made all the difference.